Nicole Auerbach's story about the ACC meeting as the conference continues to consider Stanford, Cal, and SMU. A group of ACC presidents met Wednesday. We've reported this, but kind of going over the timeline to discuss finances. One of the sources saying that another set of presidents expected to meet separately as a small group later in the week, which is Thursday, so there's a couple of days left, and a meeting of the league's athletic directors expected as well. The ACC had a number of meetings throughout the month to discuss expansion. We've known that. Sift through the financial details that could make it possible. And yet, not conducted a formal vote amid pushback from within the league. And we know who those are: Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and NC State. The conference needs 12 of the 15 members. We know that in order to make anything when it comes to adding to the conference. That's been 2 weeks since they had a straw poll. What has really changed? Nicole's going to kind of go over that with us at 5:10. We'll have Max Olson on today at 4 from The Athletic as well. And it just is a matter of what Cal, what Stanford, what SMU are willing to give up. In fact, we've heard reports that SMU's willing to give up anything, everything maybe, for a few years. What will be the partial shares for Cal and Stanford? And then on top of that, it still may not be enough unless they can flip one of those 4 votes with North Carolina schools, Florida State, and Clemson.
And that's if those are the only hardcore 4 votes. I mean, you don't know about the rest of the league. They could be like, yeah, we'll flip over. We don't care. We'll flip to no. And so there's not just a concrete block of automatic yeses necessarily.
The top 5 days about this, and I'll just preview it for anybody who's not there. One of the things is we know that there are 4 no votes right now, but as long as there's 4 public no's, nobody else has to be a no.
Right.
So Miami doesn't have to say no if they don't want this, because they've already got enough people out there, so they don't have any blood on their hands if it doesn't happen, because they can be like, well, we always wanted it. You know, we're innovative down here in Miami. We're all about it. But, you know, that's the other thing is right now 4 schools are against it, but that doesn't mean that others aren't.
There might still be some among the 8 that changed their mind. Franklin Holly, I addressed this, but I want to go over your message in the chat room. What you all are missing and wondering why Pac-12 teams are more valuable in other conferences is this. They're transitioning from north-south alignment to east and west. No, that's exactly what I mentioned, is that it is interesting that Cal, Stanford are more valuable now outside of the Pac-12 for TV money, that it was not supposed to be there. And yeah, we understand why, because they still might open up a window on the West Coast. That's absolutely for the TV windows, if in fact that does occur. So there we are. Franklin Holly, thanks for your chat room message to us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, I don't think we're confused by them having value or potentially adding value. It's just confusing how it's enough to overcome the other issues that are in play. But yeah, I mean, there's clearly an attraction to have the academics to be able to brag about, to be able to have the coast-to-coast alignment, to be able to have a West Coast presence and various other things. Make it, a worthwhile proposition for the ACC. But there's also things that I think go in the opposite direction that don't make it the greatest layup in the world. So I think that's why it's so interesting, is because just one, realignment in general, as we've seen, is pretty interesting for a lot of folks out there. But this is clearly something that's, it's a big deal. I mean, it's 2 programs and 2 other programs going different directions, clearly, but needing to find landing spots and to put, kind of a final button on whatever the Pac-12 will be looked back upon as. So, yeah, I mean, Cal and Stanford, it's clear to see why the ACC would be tempted. It's clear what Notre Dame, is clearly, was one of the ones mentioned as pushing them in. There's clearly people that see value there. But, yeah, it's just it's interesting in this situation versus the one they just came out of.
But it makes the Pac-12 seem so much more dumb in the way they handled this.
Yes.
And that
the money was there.
There's clearly value for the Pac-12. And then because they were so greedy and nose in the air and just completely not open to innovation or anything different.
I guess innovation, the Apple deal and all that, about was as innovative as it could get for this time.
But it was also the potential to be the Pac-12 network all over again.
Sure, yeah.
So they weren't, especially when it came to let's see what the Big 12 has to say. It was, no. We dare not deign to be in a conference that lives in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and Ames, Iowa, and all these places. All that stuff cost them what was value that they're getting anyway, but they're going to lose some of because they have to travel all over the place. And eventually, I mean, some of these schools still aren't really that protected in that if the Big Ten and SEC get their way, they'll push them all out anyway.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting questions here. I mean, for one, that whole SMU giving up the money for 7 years. I mean, what does that look like in 7 years? What does the ACC look like? I know they don't care. They're basically burning it. But if you're Cal and you were already struggling, I've seen this, several times now, because I think everybody's wondering the same thing. If you didn't have money before, like as far as your athletic department, and you were kind of hurting as far as that goes, Cal-wise, and somebody from Cal can explain better, but how does this make it I guess you're making more money 10 years from now potentially, but in the near term, right? I mean, between the travel and the fact that you're not taking a full share, that just seems like it's going to be more problematic financially, which is, just another layer to this that just, it doesn't make sense, is what I'm getting at. And so there's a lot of little questions like that make this a really odd story. And I think that's why people are perplexed, but also very curious, because it's like there's so many different tentacles to it that are going to have an effect in some form or fashion on, the whole country and the college football landscape.
Conundrum. So. The depth of Pac-12 stupidity cannot be measured.
No, it can't. I mean, they're like, everything they did was wrong every step of the way, and they clearly weren't on the same page as a group. And I really do wonder when everybody started to feel different levels of pressure and how much you just bought the party line, and how much you were the guy sitting there in the disaster movie when the laser hits going, oh, well, I should have probably listened to the dude with the computer in the first scene. And they've just gotten eviscerated. And yeah, none of this is ever going to make any sense to me when all you had to do was say, like, okay, like, I know ESPN and Fox, you're offering $30 million a year. Could you do like 39 and then like go? But no, to almost double the offer, be like, yeah, how about 50? And they're like, okay.
And if that story was from a professor on a campus, and that's still, Sam Bradshaw could have saved them a hell of a lot of money. They should have hired Bob Thompson, Jim Williams, and Sam Bradshaw and gotten some real data and also some background, and they didn't. And Patrick Crakes, they would have already had their deal signed a long, long time ago.